President, you may be seated. The chamber is now back in session. Before the continuing of the question to the civil party, the chamber would like to give an oral hearing in relation to the Khieu Samphan defense request regarding document E327/4/5. The chamber clarifies that it may decide to admit on its own motion some or all of the documents noted in the memorandum. The chamber grants the Khieu Samphan defense request for an extension of time. All parties shall file their observations on the admissibility of the documents noted in the memorandum on or before 15 September 2016. The decision on the remaining requests will be decided in due course. Now I give the floor to the lead co-lawyer for civil party to continue questions to the civil party.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Civil Party, I have a few additional questions for you. You explained the ceremony to us. Do you recall who the 50 couples that got married on that day with you were? Were all those men and women from mobile units? What do you have to say about the men and women who were with you on that day?
But some
among the 50 couples, all were from the mobile units. No one else came to participate except the youth from the female and the male units. Their age range were around 24, 25, but they look old because they were skinny.
Quelqu'un a-t-il refusé?
Did anyone refuse to get married on that day?
But
no one dared to refuse. If anyone dared to refuse, he or she would be disappeared.
Vous nous avez parlé de cette cérémonie, vous nous avez...
You talked to us about that ceremony. You said that people were emaciated and wearing rags. Can you describe to us the atmosphere at that ceremony? What was the atmosphere between the couples, the men and the women on that day?
but some chumriap
among the 50 couples, I had no ideas whether any men or women had prior relationship with each other. I only knew that some of them had good biographies. They were matched with their loved one. And I realized about this matter only after the wedding ceremony finished. I did not dare to ask much about this because as a new person, I was afraid that I would be accused as a spy.
Pouvez-vous nous donner le nom et
Can you give us some names, or the name and details about the person who became your wife and the new people? What do you have to say about the person you got married to on that day?
When I was committing to the marriage, I did not know her. I started to know her face only after the female unit chief, Comrade Paet, brought her to meet me in evening. In the next morning, I started to see her face more clearly, but we soon parted from each other to our respective workplace, and we ate separately. Later on, 1 month later, both the unit chief issued a letter to send me to a commune. I cannot recall the name of that commune now. It's called a ploughing unit. In Takao province. And there were 3 couples. One couple was Chinese and the 2 couples were Khmer. The Chinese man named Tri. And I and my wife met the commune chief. We were brought to meet the commune chief by the messenger. The messenger told the chief that now the children of Angka came to meet you. You had to keep them because Angka gave them to you. At the commune, the chief gave the remaining food he left to the Angka children to eat. So the 3 couples were given each a shelter. In the shelter there was a bed, and also, the shelter also had a door. We lived there. When we lived there, there were also the commune militiamen who came to monitor on us every night. The commune chief also distributed cows to us, but the cows were considered downgraded cows or low quality cows. I was happy to receive the cows. I took the cows to eat grass. I needed to take care of the cows well because the cows which were distributed to me were skinny. I also worked with the aldermen in the cooperatives. I took care of my wife and considered her just like sibling. And I told her that if the commune chief asked about our living, she needed to tell her that we loved each other and we consider each other a husband and wife. If we did not tell him like that, we would not survive. And every time we came back home, both of us slept deeply because we were so exhausted from our work. We worked from morning till night. Our work consisted of many things: ploughing the field, carrying us, and feeding the cows. So we were so exhausted. We slept deeply, and in the morning we got up and went back to work.
Comment s'appelait votre femme et
What was your wife's name, and was she a member of the New People as well?
បាទ
My wife's name was Sokhat. She was also a new person. Her siblings were not smashed by Angkar.
Merci. Dans le document E3,
Thank you. In document E3/5733, which is your civil party application, and the ERN in French is 0094 2172, in Khmer 00411 856 257, and in English 008 10851. It is stated that you were married to a person called Chan, C-H-A-N. Is this an error on the document, or your wife's name was also Chan?
បាទ
Chan was not my wife's name. I think it was written wrongly. But in my area there was a person named Chan. She helped me. She told me to follow Angkar's order. But that person was the chief of the unit.
étiez-vous le premier homme que
Were you the first man your wife had known, or had she had other relationships with other fiancés before she got married to you?
After our marriage, I only knew that my wife was a new person. Her parents were deceased. She had no fiancé.
avez-vous fait l'objet de surveillance pour
Were you the subject of some monitoring to ascertain whether you consummated the marriage?
ខ្ញុំ
When I was in the mobile unit, and after the marriage, Comrade Pat brought my wife to me. Then there was the messengers of Ri and Put who came to meet us regularly. And after I left the mobile unit to join the cooperative to the south of Takao province, there were also militiamen from the cooperative who kept monitoring us. They monitor us about once or twice. I told them that how could I had intercourse because I was so exhausted and skinny. And people at the cooperatives who had good health. When they saw me were in bad health and skinny appearance like that, they told me to eat more in order to increase my energy. So when I went ploughing the paddy field and I caught frogs and crabs, I ate the frogs and crabs. I did not dare to find any other food because I felt afraid that I would be arrested.
មានតែប៉ុណ្ណឹង
That's all for my answer.
Je vous remercie. Vous nous avez indiqué.
Thank you. You have told us that you were forced to get married and that you did not love the woman you got married to. Did you try to be separated from one another after the marriage?
Donc toujours pendant le régime.
So we are still talking about the situation during the Democratic Cambodia regime.
Frankly speaking, at that time, during DK regime, we were still terrified because we were afraid. We had to say that we loved each other. If we said that we wanted to get separated, both of us would be killed. So we did not dare to say that we would get divorced. We had to say that we loved each other. We would live with each other forever.
Il me reste quelques questions.
I have a few questions left, Mr. Civil Party. Did you remain with your wife after the end of the Democratic Cambodia regime in 1979 and thereafter?
Frankly speaking, in 1979, at that time, it was after the Liberation Day, we remained living with each other, but we were not yet reunited with our parents and siblings. So we were still together at that time. Because of the pressure from parents and siblings who convinced us that we should live together, because each side of us, I mean, I and my wife, were innocent people who committed good deeds. We should love each other and take each other as husband and wife. We should not get divorced. We should live with each other. And under such circumstances, it took me many days to consider about this. And I also noticed that my wife were always committing good deeds to me and to my family members. So I committed to living with her, and we have children together. Later on, my wife became sick. She was severely sick. The doctor asked me, and he told me that I could no longer live with her. I had to help her to recover from her illness. but I cannot live with her as husband and wife to produce any more children because of the disease that she had. And as a result, we were separated. And then I got married with another woman.
Je vous remercie. J'ai une dernière question.
Thank you. I have one last question for you. This morning, you talked about your fiancé. Did you hear anything about your wife during your marriage, during the Democratic Cambodia regime, or after the Democratic Cambodia regime?
ក្រោយពីរបបកម្ពុជា
After the collapse of the DK regime, I met her. I took her hand and I hugged her. Each of us wept because, and we told each other that in this life we needed to make good merits. Maybe from our previous life we did not make enough good merits. So we have to make good merit in this life so that in the future life we would be together. We kept weeping while hugging each other. We understood each other and we had a lot of good memory with each other, like riding bicycle together. We wished to be together, but unfortunately we were not allowed to live together. So we told each other to make good merit so that we would accumulate good merit.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. Thank you, Mr. President. I have no further questions for the Civil Party, and I now give the floor to the co-prosecutors.
សូមជឿ
President, thank you, Madam Lead Lawyer for Civil Party. The floor is now given to the co-prosecutor.
Thank you and good morning, Mr. President, Your Honours, Council. Good morning, Mr. Civil Party. My name is Coleman Kenny, and I'll be asking you some questions on behalf of the co-prosecutors about the events and experiences that are brought to you here today. I'd like to begin, Mr. Civil Party, by asking a couple of follow-up questions about your marriage in 1978. You mentioned this morning that you were told by your unit chief that you could not marry your fiancée because her brother had been smashed, and that the unit chief used the phrase, "When we pull out the grass, we have to pull out the weed." Could you tell the court, Mr. Civil Party, what did you understand by this statement?
But
The unit chief told us like that if I still wanted to take the woman whose brother was smashed by Angka, I would not be allowed to marry her. Because if I married her, and because her brother was smashed, and if the woman got married to me, I also would be smashed. Because the whole family would be smashed. He compared it to digging the grass. They had to dig out the roots.
Mr. Civil Party, you also mentioned that the unit chief had also used as a threat that people had been smashed in Sector 33 in relation to not accepting that they were going to be married. Mr. Civil Party, how did you know about this story of what happened in Sector 33?
The unit chief Put, who was the biggest, who is the top chief of the mobile unit in Trang district, said, "You are comrades. You could observe that if you were the children of Angkar, then I would organize the marriage for you all." In Sector 33 in Kampong Speu province, that is in Cambodia, the unit chief married pretty women to an handsome man, and likewise the handsome men were married to an pretty women. Literate men or educated men will be married with uneducated women, and vice versa. And those people were not happy, so they went to pray before a sacred object. They wished their husband to die. And the same thing applies to the handsome men. They prayed that their wives would die. And subsequently, those unit chiefs were all killed. And we, the 50 couples, were told by unit chief Put about what happened in Sector 33.
And Mr. Civil Party, you mentioned that you yourself had found skeletons in a forest. Could you tell us where exactly that forest was?
The skeleton remains that I found was when I went to work at the Tumnuk Prawatasa, or historical dam. It was built across the river from Mongkolburay mountain to the south direction, and it turned to Buray Chulasa, and the area was an extensive lake. The unit chief ordered us to carry dirt to build the dam, and I went around to pick some lotus seeds to fill my stomach. And to the east of the mountain, members from the female unit told us that they found a lot of skeleton remains to the eastern part of the mountain, and that's how I knew that people had been killed there. But personally, I only saw the area from a distance. I saw the white color of the skeleton remains, but I did not dare to approach the area, as I was accused of being an enemy. And the area was not far from the Cambodian-Vietnamese border.
You also mentioned, Mr. Civil Party, that you assumed that these skeletons were the victims of what had occurred in Sector 33. Could you tell the court what it was that made you think that those skeletons were the people who had been killed in Sector 33?
Since I personally did not see the act of the execution, however, from a distance I could see those skeletons and skeleton remains. And when I put one and one together, as the unity spoke about the killing in Sector 33, I made that conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. You've mentioned that you told your wife of the need, if anybody asked her, that she needed to say that you loved each other and that you considered each other to be husband and wife. Did that include having to talk about sexual relations between you?
Of course, I did not speak about that to everyone. I only spoke amongst us, that is the two of us, that if we were asked about our sexual intercourse, we had to tell them that we did. But if we were not asked, then there was no need to mention that. However, apparently we had to act that we were like husband and wife. But I did not go around telling everyone about our relationship. Of course, at the time, from what appeared, they considered us as we loved one another.
Can I ask, Mr. Civil Party, what was it that made you feel that you had to tell your wife that if anybody had asked whether you had sexual relations, that she would have to tell them that you did? What was it that made you feel that had to be said?
It's not difficult to respond to your question. If we were not to tell them about that, it means that we did not love one another, and as a result, we will be taken away and killed. And if we told them that we loved one another, that we had sexual intercourse with one another, then we will be spared.
You also mentioned, Mr. Civil Party, that militiamen were monitoring the area each night. Do you know if they were monitoring to check whether you were having sexual relations?
Yes, militiamen did come to monitor us. However, they were standing outside and they could not see through the wall of the house. I did not hear them saying anything, although they came to the vicinity of the house. They tried to listen to us, and later on they went away. And neighbors said that they spoke to those militiamen that we were emaciated and that we easily slept through the night.
Mr. Civil Party, you mentioned that some people were allowed to choose and to marry the ones that they loved. How did you yourself know about this?
About other couples, although they were new people, but if none of their relatives or family members had been smashed, and that if they were fiancés, then they could marry one another. If the man had his relatives smashed, then the man would not be allowed to marry a woman whose relative had not been smashed. And if the family members from both sides had been smashed, then they were allowed to marry one another. And that's all I knew.
But as far as you know, was that choice only coming from the man, or was that also a choice for women as well?
regarding the choice. If the man and the woman did not have any of their relatives smashed, then they could marry one another. However, if their biographies mentions that some family members have been smashed, then the person could not marry the one that the family members had not been smashed.
I'd like to move now, Mr. Civil Party, to ask you about your experience during the Khmer Rouge regime as a former policeman in the Lon Nol era. Mr. Civil Party, were you aware of any efforts by the Khmer Rouge to locate members of the former Lon Nol administration, such as policemen or soldiers?
I don't fully get your question. Please rephrase it.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Civil Party. Having been a former policeman yourself, were you involved or did you see or hear of any instances when the Khmer Rouge were looking out for people who had worked under the Lon Nol regime, either as soldiers or policemen?
Yes, I know about that. In my mobile unit, the unit chief himself tries to search for the background of unit members. If someone says that person was a policeman or a former soldier, then that would be noted. And from what I knew, the same process was conducted at the village. As for me, somebody reported that I was a former policeman in Phnom Penh during the Lon Nol regime. Somebody actually pinpointed me out, and I was afraid about that. However, I kept denying, and I said that I was a student and I was a former monk. And I was asked if I was a former monk, then I should be able to recite some scripts. And I was asked to do that, and that's what I did. Then there was a base elder woman who was also a chief. She told me that through her knowledge that I had been a student and a monk, and that I should restrain myself from saying that I was a policeman or a soldier, otherwise I would be smashed. Those who were soldiers or policemen had been smashed by 1978. And another unit chief named Suk from my village knew also that I was a student and a former monk, but none from my village knew that I was a former policeman in Phnom Penh, and for that reason I could conceal my biography. When I left Phnom Penh and arrived in Trapeang Snow in Kampong Cham province, I was detained in Paau district, and only those ranked officers had been executed. For the low rank and file policemen or soldiers, we were allowed to live in the villages. A man told me that I should not tell them that I was a policeman, and he himself was a colonel, but he said that he was a labor worker. And in Trapeang Snow village, we told them that we were workers, and for that reason we were allowed to leave. Otherwise, if we were to tell them that we were soldiers or policemen, we would be smashed.
Mr. Civil Party, in Paav district, you've mentioned the execution of soldiers of a certain rank. How did you know about this?
I testified in case 001 about that because I personally witnessed it, and I, amongst those ranked officers, were ordered to write our own biographies, and that we had to submit the biography to those chief of the Khmer Rouge. So for those first and second lieutenants, they were put in one group and taken away, and for us, the rank and file soldiers or policemen were allowed to disperse into villages. And I witnessed the event clearly. And those ranked officers, including a colonel, were transported one by one on a motorbike away.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. I realize that you've mentioned your testimony in case 2-1, but as this is a new proceedings, we also have to go through it again. Can you explain, in relation to that incident of certain ranks, how those individuals were initially identified before they had to give their biography?
After I left Phnom Penh and arrived in Paav district, those people who went on a propaganda drive for the Khmer Rouge spoke so sweetly, and they said that anyone who was a ranked officer from the second lieutenant to colonel were required by Angkar in order to return to their respective offices, because it was difficult in order to train people to become ranked officers. So please state that clearly about that. And if you were a rickshaw driver, you have to say so, but you cannot tell that you are a colonel. And such an appeal, such a propaganda by chiefs of the Khmer Rouge at that location was so sweet. And as a result, people succumbed to it, and they mentioned that they were second lieutenant, first lieutenant, or military police. There was a man who also said that his son was also a military police, and those ranked officers were subsequently detained. And those people succumbed to the sweet propaganda by the Khmer Rouge clique. As another person who came to testify here, that Angkar requires to tie them up, and people just simply allow them to do that because they succumb to the sweet propaganda and the pretext and the lies used by those Khmer Rouge people. And I would like to reiterate that I do not wish to see the return of such a dirty regime. I despise it very much. It was so immoral. Some of them were so very well educated, but they killed their own people with bamboo clubs, and they forced people to marry one another, and they kept the good women for themselves. For example, those Chinese chiefs. As for us, we had to follow their orders. And we had to be separated from the ones that we loved. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. Just continuing with that particular incident. So the propagandist of the Khmer Rouge put out a call for individuals of a certain rank, and you say that those of a certain rank identify themselves as such. Can you please tell the court what happened at that point? Once people had identified themselves, had answered to the propaganda, as you say, had identified themselves of being a certain rank under the Lon Nol regime, what happened then?
As I stated, I testified in case 002/01 on this point. However, since you asked me again, then allow me to repeat it. When I was in Paao district, there was this propaganda committee, and as I said, their words were so sweet. And at that time, they did not show us that they arrested this person or that person. It seems that they made an appeal to us gently. And of course, we also loved our nation, and that the nation needed us, needed the soldiers. And they said for those comrades who came from the city and who had expertise, then please inform Onka, and Onka would pinpoint the proper work in relation to our expertise. But in the end, they all had been smashed. But it was the propaganda that made them have the love for the country, and frankly, they told them about their rank. For example, second lieutenant or first lieutenant, etc. And that's because of the sweet propaganda that drove them, as well as because of their love for the country and to respond to the need of the country to have soldiers.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. Again, I appreciate that you've answered these questions in case 2-1, but we do have to ask these questions and answer them again, please. So, in between those individuals identifying themselves of a certain rank and higher, and before their execution, what happened? Can you describe the events leading up to that?
Before they were taken away for execution, they were instructed to write their own biography by themselves, and that they had to mention which rank they received from what year to what year and which military unit they were attached to. And those who came to give them instruction to write their biographies appeared to be humble, they smiled. As for those who ride the CL motorcycles, there were 5 CL motorcycles. They came with their broad smile. And at that location, there were armed Khmer soldiers who were also so friendly and smiled. So nobody ever thought that they were sent for re-education and they were smashed. So they were transported in those on those bicycles with the book and pen. However, every 5 minutes also the motorcycles returned, and When I was in my mobile unit, I was the sole survivor out of the 100 members of the unit, since I said that I was a student and I survived. When people were sent for this assignment or that assignment, for example, a group of 10 to go and clear the forest or to go and climb palm trees, in fact, they were sent to a detention center. And later on, their clothes were brought back. Then we realized that they had been killed. So those rank officers in Paau, those who ranked from second lieutenant to colonel, were killed. And they were killed in around May 1975 in Paau. So they were killed about a month after we left Phnom Penh. They were not sent for study sessions, but in fact they were killed in those former B-52 crates.
And just to clarify, Mr. Civil Party, when those officers of a certain rank were filling out their biographies, were you amongst that group at the time? Were you within that group of people who were filling out their biographies?
Yes, I told them. I told them that I was a reserve candidate. But the Khmerus themselves did not understand the word reserve candidate. However, in the biography, they wrote that I was a private. And of course, I also observed that they write the rank officers in their biographies, for example, second lieutenant or a colonel.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. I just have a couple of more questions. Did you yourself fill out a biography at this time?
Yes, I did.
And what did you write in that biography? About your previous occupation?
I wrote that I studied and that I was a monk and that I was a reserve candidate for the Tribunal government, that is a reserve policeman. And it was the word reserve that allowed me to survive, that I was spared.
Mr. Civil Party, why did you conceal your background? What had you seen or heard to make you think that it was necessary to lie about your background?
I did not lie, but I wrote the truth that I was a reserve policeman for the government. Because at that time their appeal was so sweet, so tempting, and that I wrote the truth. I told the Khmerus the truth.
Final question, Mr. Civil Party. Did you understand from what you had seen that if persons identify themselves in their biographies of a certain rank, that they would be taken away as a result?
ខ្ញុំ
Allow me to mention 2 points. President interrupts civil party. Please hold on. And Council for Case and Point, you have the floor. Kong Sam On, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to object to the last question. It is a hypothetical question since he used the word if. So I object to that.
We have a language issue. Rephrase, please.
Thank you, Your Honour. Mr. Civil Party, was it your understanding that the contents of a biography, from what you had seen from others of a certain rank who were being honest about what they wrote in their biographies of their position in the Lon administration, did you think that because of what they had written, they were taken away?
Indeed, that what happened, those who wrote their honest biographies were taken away, that is, those with the ranks from second lieutenant to colonel, and that's what happened in Pau. And when I came to Takao, if I were to write my biography as a policeman, then I would die.
Thank you, Mr. Civil Party. Your Honours, the co-prosecutors have no further questions.
Thank you, co-prosecutor. It is now time for our lunch break. We take a break now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon to continue our proceedings. Mr. Civil Party, you may also rest and please return to the courtroom at 1:30. Security personnel, you are instructed to take Kyo Sampon to the waiting room downstairs and have him return to attend the proceedings this afternoon before 1:30. The court stands in recess.